Hello everyone, and welcome to this latest video from me, MintySquidz. And after so long, I am finally here to do my retrospective review, whatever this is, for Doctor Who Series 2 of the revival, which is the first series, because it's called series back at that point from BBC, I don't know why, for the first series of David Tennant's 10th Doctor, with him and Rose. Originally this was going to be a series of reaction videos, and then the BBC decided to just go about and just be like, hey, we're going to copyright claim all those videos, and that was just annoying, so I decided to do this instead, especially since as we're getting closer and closer to newer New Who, I'm actually remembering more of these episodes. So instead of getting reactions and not having like as most genuine reactions to them, I'm just watching them instead, doing these long form videos of retrospective reviews for them instead. So the way this is going to work is I'm going to basically do a beginning part where I'm going to show like still images of the episode and do a synopsis of the episode with some minor thoughts, and then the end of each episode I'm going to talk about my own personal thoughts for it and like a rating or whatever, and then at the very end having a full conclusion for the whole series as a whole, and talk about some different things that I found out in them as well. So without any further ado, let's get started, shall we? Episode 1, New Earth. Tennant's first full foray as the Doctor finds him and Rose traveling 5 billion years into the future to the titular New Earth, following the destruction of actual Earth, which was seen in the episode The End of the World from Eccleston's run. The Doctor was telepathically summoned to New Earth by the Face of Bo to investigate what's been happening in the hospital that the Face of Bo is currently placed in. However, Rose gets separated from the Doctor and ends up getting captured and mind-swapped by Cassandra, who is appearing again after supposedly dying in The End of the World. Once Rose reunites with the Doctor, it doesn't take long for them to figure out that the cat nurses of the hospital are actually doing mass experiments on a new species of human, later cleverly named New Humans, infecting them with every illness in the galaxy as a way to find a universal cure for all of them. This inevitably leads to the New Humans escaping their containment pods and beginning a zombie-like invasion of the hospital, only to have the Doctor very quickly create the universal cure himself by simply mixing all the other cures together, because that's just how diseases work, am I right? By the end, the Face of Bo tells the Doctor that they will meet again, and then the Doctor allows Cassandra to see her younger self one last time before she finally dies, for good this time. Overall, this episode is fine, but has some major tone issues. The serious nature of the human disease farm is really undercut by far too many jokes from Cassandra in Rose's body. Also, the zombie angle and the incredibly quick resolution to all that took away from the overall episode. Also, attempting to redeem Cassandra at the end of the episode felt really unnecessary given how much of a nuisance she had been in both the episodes that she was part of. I guess it was used to somehow show the kindness of the Doctor, and I don't think Cassandra necessarily deserved a happy ending, especially since she was more than willing to kill everyone on that space station back in last season, but whatever. A final dislike is one that I'm going to be having as a running issue throughout all of the rest of Rose's run and the beginning of Rose's run too, is the romantic subplot between Rose and the Doctor. It's fairly annoying in the beginning of the episode and luckily kind of dies off as the episode goes on, but it's just kind of there and I just don't like it. It's just one of those things. I know it's a New Who thing more than anything, but it's something I just don't like and I need to point out anyway. On the positive side, the prosthetics used for the cat nurses, really great, especially for 2006, really great. And also David Tennant is really solid as the Doctor, especially in scenes with the Face of Bo, and is able to draw some really good emotions from there. And you can tell he hasn't necessarily solidified his Doctor at this point yet, but he's getting there and he's figuring it out. Also, Billie Piper is really funny in this episode, especially when she has body swapped with Cassandra. There's some great, like, comedy in there from Billie Piper that I don't think we really get to see as much of in her run. It just sucks that it's the competing tone of the episode that really brings it all down. So an overall rating for the episode, I give it a 3 out of 5, and I say it's funny enough and it's fun enough to start his run as the Doctor. Episode 2, Tooth. and Claw. The second episode sees the Doctor and Rose accidentally travel to the Scottish moors in 1879 and are met by Queen Victoria as she and her guards travel to the Torchwood estate after having to do a detour around the train station. However, the estate has been taken over by a group of warrior monks who have an alien werewolf captured and intend to have it infect Queen Victoria with the werewolf curse to create a new Empire of the Wolf. After the Doctor and Rose reach the estate, it isn't long until they figure out what's going on. Rose gets captured and becomes our favorite comrade Rose and rallies the other captured workers to band together and break out. Eventually, the cast of characters meet back up and attempt to figure out how to stop the werewolf that is now on the loose. The workers hide away in the kitchen and make a broth of mistletoe, which is used later to fend off the wolf, while the Doctor and his crew figure out that everything is connected in the library. In the end, the Doctor and Rose trap the wolf in the estate's observatory and direct a beam of moonlight onto it to overload it with lunar energy and eventually defeat it. Because Doctor Who. Turns out the Koh-i-Noor diamond that Prince Albert had commissioned for Victoria, which is a real thing by the way, was the key to it all along. The next morning, Queen Victoria knights both the Doctor and Rose before banishing them from the British Empire for bringing trouble with them. Lucky for them, they're time travelers. Before the end of the episode, it is revealed that Queen Victoria might have contracted the werewolf curse from a small cut she sustained during the night, and that Victoria also declares the Torchwood estate to be used as the base of the new Torchwood Institute. So unlike the first episode of this series, I actually really loved this episode. The pacing felt just right, the premise of an alien werewolf of all things taking over the British Empire felt unique, and Torchwood estate is a good location to house the action and it's a slight bit of horror of the premise. And the acting was on point from everyone as well, which is also really cool. The tone felt just right in the episode, as well as the balanced moments of humor, as well as the overall stakes of the episode. However, what I really loved was that we got to see the origin of Torchwood, which is a major part of the Russell T Davies era of Doctor Who that we already saw and was already mentioned in Eccleston's run and has now become a full force in Tennant's run as well. Overall, this episode gets a 4.5 from me, with the only real downers being the setup of the monks, which is never actually explained and is dealt with fairly quickly once the werewolf gets introduced. Episode 3, School Reunion. The third episode of Tennant's initial outing as the 10th Doctor is when this series begins to really settle in and find its groove. The Doctor and Rose go undercover at Deffrey Vale High School, where many strange things are afoot, as the two, with the help of Mickey, begin to uncover that some form of alien presence is behind the strangeness. They are joined by Sarah Jane Smith, played once again by the wonderful Elizabeth Sladen, as well as K9, who are both former companions of the Doctor from Classic Who. The newly formed group of the Doctor, Rose, Sarah Jane, and Mickey eventually find out that most of the staff of the school have been replaced by bat-like aliens called Krillitanes, who were using the students as computers to break the Skaxis paradigm, which is basically the god code of the universe and is a made-up thing. The group devises a plan to stop the Krillitanes before they can break the code, which ultimately involves blowing up the school and killing all of the Krillitanes in the process. And yes, the Doctor didn't want to kill them all initially, but he did do it without question once they chose to not heed his warning. A little bit of some no mercy Doctor there, which is a point I will be bringing back up later in my conclusion, but either way. The Doctor tells K9 to blow up the school, thus ending the Krillitanes' plan and destroying K9 in the process. It's a sad time for all. The episode then ends with the Doctor finally being able to say a true goodbye to Sarah Jane, and with Rose being reassured that traveling with the Doctor is worth the trouble in the end. Also, Mickey joins the TARDIS crew for the next adventure. As the TARDIS leaves, it is revealed that the Doctor rebuilt and improved K9 as well, so that way Sarah Jane would not be lonely. This episode is interesting, since on the surface, it's a fairly basic Monster of the Week style episode with some major Scooby-Doo vibes involving the mystery aspect. However, the episode is elevated to honestly one of the best of this whole series with the addition of Sarah Jane and K9. Their presence added a lot to the episode and helped to remind us fans that the classic series did in fact happen and they still are canon. Yes, Classic Who exists, people. It is still there. It still exists. Elizabeth Sladen is perfect as Sarah Jane, as she always has been, and while I personally was not the biggest fan of the jealous dynamic between her and Rose, I did very much appreciate that Sarah Jane was able to offer some wisdom as a former companion to Rose going forward to kind of help with her character arc. Also, this episode helped to set up the spin-off series of the Sarah Jane Adventures, which is something I really need to watch because I heard it was just a fun time, especially since this was the second time that Sarah Jane had a spin-off series, and this one actually lasted for more than one season, so that's a cool thing. This episode episode for me gets a 4.75. It is not perfect because there are some elements of it that I just don't necessarily like. Mainly the villains. They're okay. They're basic. They're okay. But everything else is just so good. So a 4.75 out of 5 for me, and it's honestly just one of the best one of the whole series. Episode 4. The Girl in the Fireplace. Alright, so I'll be upfront with this one. This is a masterpiece of an episode, with only a few things hindering it. This is easily the best episode of Tennant's first series, and possibly the best episode of Tennant's run as the Doctor as well. This episode does so much right, and truly stands as one of the best stories of New Who, and is one that only could be told in New Who as well. And with that out of the way, here's a synopsis. The Doctor, Rose, and Mickey arrive on an abandoned spaceship that oddly has an 18th century French fireplace in it. The fireplace turns out to be a time window back to Versailles, France, where the Doctor protects a young girl from a clockwork robot. As the Doctor soon learns, the girl is named Renette and is in fact Madame de Pompadour, the mistress of King Louis XV. The Doctor returns to the spaceship to discover more time windows throughout the ship, all linking back to different points in Renette's life. During one of the time jumps, the Doctor saves Renette from another of the clockwork robots and learns that the robots are actually repair droids who killed the crew and used their body parts to repair the ship, with the final plan being to kill Renette at age 37 and harvest her brain to finish the repairs. Yes, that is an actual sentence and part of the plot synopsis for this episode. Of course, the Doctor vows to stop this and protect Renette, as he has done now throughout her entire life. The final confrontation occurs during a masked ball in which the Doctor bursts through a massive mirror, thus closing off the last time window to the ship, which traps them all in the 18th century, thus causing the clockwork robots to shut down. However, it is revealed that Renette had her original fireplace moved to Versailles, and it was somehow still connected to the ship. The Doctor tells her to prepare to go with him so they can go on adventures together. But when he returns to the fireplace, 7 years have passed and Renette had passed away, leaving only a letter in which she stated that she awaits his quick return. And there also is no explanation as to why he couldn't just go back to her in the TARDIS, but we're just going to move on from that. The closing shot of the episode finds the TARDIS crew leaving the ship, not knowing why the robots wanted Renette, only for us as the audience to find that the ship was called the USS Madame de Pompadour. Just wow to this episode. As mentioned earlier, this episode is probably one of Tennant's best episodes, and is one of the best of his first series as well. The pacing of the story is perfect here, with how quickly it goes between time periods, while never feeling like it's moving too fast. The chemistry between Tennant and Sophia Miles, who is playing Madame de Pompadour, is felt instantly, and the tragedy of Renette dying before the Doctor could bring her on his adventures is felt. The clockwork robots are also a phenomenal antagonist for the episode, and have such a memorable look to them, with the Versailles French like 18th century garb, and then being like clockwork robots. That's such a cool design. With all that being said, and with acknowledging that this is probably my favorite episode of this series, there are some issues with the episode as a whole. For starters, the Doctor just leaves Rose and Mickey on the spaceship, and it appears as if they're fairly fine with that as well. They don't have much to do. Like, Rose and Mickey feel like they're doing things to help on the ship, but they aren't really doing much. My synopsis, I hardly mention them at all because they aren't important to the whole plot. Like, they really aren't. So like, once they learn the ship is being powered by human organs, and then they get captured by robots only to be rescued by an apparently drunk doctor, Rose and Mickey are pretty much afterthoughts in the episode beyond that, which feels very strange as a follow-up to School Reunion, where Rose is a very important part and learns about how the importance of being a companion from Sarah Jane and gets the confidence boost she needs to keep traveling with the Doctor. It's weird following it up with them doing nothing. Along with that, while I love Madame de Pompadour in this and think that Sophia Miles plays her beautifully, her actual character leaves a lot to be desired in terms of having an actual character. This is sadly a running issue with Stephen Moffat, who wrote the episode, and is something that we will definitely see later on when he becomes a showrunner of the show. He's not always the best at writing a female character. The actual romance angle of this episode between the Doctor and Renette is also a bit odd as well, given that the Doctor first met her when she was an actual child, but also any romance involving the Doctor is very strange, to be completely honest. I'm still looking at you, Rose. That's a strange aspect there too. But with all of that being said, I really love this episode, flaws and all, and it's a 5 out of 5 episode for me, and it really hits. Episode 5. Rise of the Cybermen. Alright, so this is the first of the two-part mid-series finale, as I'm referring to it. I'll keep the synopsis brief, given it is a two-parter, and this video is already getting a bit longer than I had intended to. So, in this episode, we get the TARDIS crew of the Doctor, Rose, and Mickey crash landing in a parallel universe in, of course, London, of all places. Mickey points out that the Zeppelins are a sign of the parallel universe because, of course, they are. However, Rose notices an advertisement for a health drink with her father as the spokesperson, and has her mind set on seeing her dad again, even though the Doctor tells her that it's a very bad idea. Meanwhile, the very obvious villain of the episode, the wheelchair-bound John Lumic, does a few different villainous deeds, such as hijacking some ear pods to get private information, sending out his goons to kidnap homeless people off the street to experiment on them, and preparing to launch his new creation to upgrade humanity. The TARDIS crew split up, with Mickey finding his grandmother who had died in the Prime universe, and then promptly getting taken by a group of resistance fighters that think he's their leader, and the Doctor and Rose sneaking into the Tyler mansion. Rose goes to talk with her parents, while the Doctor learns about Cybus Industries, which is the company that John Lumic owns. However, the party is cut short once the Lumic upgrades arrive, and the Doctor realizes that they are a brand new form of the Cybermen. The episode concludes on a cliffhanger as the Doctor, Rose, and Pete Tyler are surrounded by the Cybermen and are about to get upgraded. So I'm going to start off by saying that I liked a lot of what this episode was going for, while also thinking the actual episode itself was just fine. The Doctor is fun in this episode for the most part, but doesn't really get much to do. Rose feels regressive, sadly, after her character development from the previous season with the episode of Father's Day, though. Having her just regress to recklessly wanting to see an alternate version of her dad doesn't feel right for the character at this point. Also, the villain of John Lumic, played by Roger Lloyd Pack as well, is really overly acted, and immediately goes from being a possible threatening villain to being just comically villainous. Also, Jackie Tyler, still played by Camille Cordray, still feels like the worst type of person. Just the worst. Which I guess means that she's playing the character well if the character is supposed to be written like that. It's just annoying. It just is always annoying. Either way, the good parts of the episode are easily Mickey and Pete, though. Mickey, still played by Noel Clarke, gets so much character development set up, and then gets later character development in the next episode as well. And he actually feels important instead of being an afterthought in this episode, which is great. And Pete, still played again by Sean Dingwall, delivers the same type of emotionality, the emotionally stellar performance that he did in Father's Day as well, just now as a completely different version of Pete, but still feels like Pete Tyler, which is great. The character of Pete Tyler is such an interesting one that I feel doesn't get brought up enough when mentioning Rose's tenure as a companion and her overall story arc as well. And the final part that I really liked about this episode that honestly does bump it up a bit for me is the fact that they introduced the Cybermen and their new designs are so cool. I really like the new designed Cybermen. I love that, and I've said it before, Cybermen are my favorite Doctor Who villain, enemy, whatever, and I love the updated design so much, and it just feels so nostalgic for me, and that it just really hits. They look like emotionless tanks, and they have the singular goal of upgrading the universe, and I like that. They feel like they feel like they should. And with all that being said, the overall episode just felt okay, though, and was clearly set up for the next episode. So this episode gets a 3 out of 5 for me. Just kind of there, but also it's bumped up because it introduces the Cybermen again, and I love the Cybermen. Episode 6. Age of Steel. The second of this two-part episode picks up exactly where the previous one left off, with the crew surrounded by Cybermen. However, the Doctor uses the last energy cell of the TARDIS to blast the Cybermen and allow for the crew to escape. As they all leave, Pete tells them that he's been secretly feeding information to the Resistance group and only worked for Lumic in order to eventually take him down. Meanwhile, Lumic goes even more villainous and commands everyone wearing the ear pods to walk to the Cybermen factories that I guess had been there the whole time to get upgraded. The Doctor and crew split up to get away from the Cybermen. However, during this chase, the parallel version of Mickey, named Ricky, is caught by the Cybermen and killed. While this is happening, Lumic is betrayed by his lackey, Mr. Crane, and is taken to a conversion chamber by the Cybermen so that his life can be saved. After some planning, the group splits up once again to infiltrate the factory and stop the Cybermen invasion. After a lot of infiltrating and the unfortunate death of Miss Moore, the Doctor learns that the Cybermen are created with an emotion chip, but it is set to off. The Doctor then comes up with a plan to send a signal through the Cybermen network to turn the chip on, thus killing them all, which he's able to do after sending a message to Mickey while monologuing to the newly created cyber controller. As a signal is sent through the network, the Doctor and crew begin to escape as the cyber controller follows them but is sent to his demise by Pete. In the end, Mickey decides to stay on the parallel Earth since he has a place there and can help. The Doctor wishes him luck and tells Rose that after they leave, they aren't able to come back, which she eventually accepts as they all go their separate ways. This episode is a lot better than the previous one, only because it is the conclusion of the story that was already set up. The issues I had with the previous episode are still ultimately there, except the Doctor gets a lot more to do this time around. However, I still have some of an issue with his method of dispatching the Cybermen by basically making them all die of a realization that they are now trapped in robot bodies. It feels really brutal for the Doctor, but is yet another example of the 10th Doctor being a bit more okay with that, which I find very interesting. Rose is a bit better in this episode as well, but she also isn't really given much to do per se, since the first part was more her episode. Mickey is easily the standout, getting so much character development and growing to become quite the badass character, and I do remember that he pops back up again next series as well, and that character development rolls forward with him. He's just great now. And yes, the Cybermen are still very cool, and the cyber controller is also really cool and has a good design as well. So overall, the episode gets a 3.5 out of 5, since the issues I had with the first part are still present, but it ends the story. So I guess rating the full story, it kind of becomes like a 4, maybe a 3.25 if you average it, whatever you feel like. It's a 3.5 episode. Episode 7, The Idiot's Lantern. We've now reached the back half of the season, technically, and we start off with an episode that I have a lot of mixed feelings about. So this episode finds the Doctor and Rose traveling to 1953 in Muswell Hill, London, even though they intended on going to New York to see Elvis. There's a montage of them on a scooter, and it is not my cup of tea because it brings up the romantic subplot between the Doctor and Rose that I am not a fan of. However, we then are introduced to the actual plot and subplot of the episode, which revolves around the Connolly family and television. To speed up the synopsis a little bit, the televisions are being used as a conduit for an alien entity called The Wire, which is stealing people's faces who watch the television. Eddie Connolly is a World War II veteran and is abusive to his family, while his wife Rita and son Tommy just want to find out why their grandmother has no face anymore. Eventually, the Doctor and Rose learn that all the televisions came from one store, Magpie Electricals. The two split up, and Rose gets her face taken by The Wire, because of course she does. The Doctor learns of this and goes on the hunt for The Wire along with Detective Inspector Bishop, who we just met, and Tommy Connolly. At Magpie's shop, they are confronted by The Wire, and she tells them her plan of boosting her signal to all of London and feasting on the energy of everyone while they all watch Queen Elizabeth's coronation so she can become a physical entity again. The Wire begins to escape while the Doctor and Tommy devise a way to stop her. In true 10th Doctor fashion, he begins to chase The Wire and Magpie up a signal tower to stop them. The Wire kills Magpie and absorbs his energy before the Doctor stops her from finishing her transmission by trapping her in a Betamax tape. The episode concludes with The Wire's victims getting their faces back, Rose and the Doctor enjoying a neighborhood feast to celebrate the coronation, and for some reason, Tommy going to console his father after he is kicked out of the house for being an abusive, fascistic ass. So this episode is a total mixed bag, and it all starts with the directing choice to have the entire episode shot using only Dutch angles. So this technique is used in cinema to portray suspense since the camera is tilted slightly, making it all appear off. This is supposed to be used sparingly to convey a sense of unease, not be used through a 45-minute episode where it becomes really annoying and really disorienting after a while. Also, the actual premise of the episode feels like it had been done before and done better in other shows. That premise being TV bad. Like TV bad, TV taking over people, don't trust TV. It's just felt overdone at that point from many different angles. I can't think of any at the moment, but it just feels like it's been done before, especially at that time as well. Also, Mr. Connolly is such a horrible character, which I know he's kind of supposed to be, and it would be fine if it wasn't insinuated that he is redeemed by the end by Tommy. No. Just no, he should not be redeemed. He is an abusive character and does not deserve it. All that being said, I do think Rose is pretty good in this episode, yet again being a bit more of Comrade Rose, and relating to the Connollys a lot, especially relating to Rita and to Tommy, since they're just normal people. And she also feels like a relative equal to the Doctor in this episode until she gets face snatched. She feels like an actual partner to the Doctor, and there's a nice buddy cop dynamic to them as well, where she does feel feel like an actual companion, which is good. I also really like the idea of the Wire as a villain. It is such a great Doctor Who enemy. Even if the execution wasn't necessarily the best, I still like the concept of this digital enemy. And I am also happy to note that during my research for this episode after I watched it, I did find out the Wire did pop back up again in a later Doctor Who comic book, like mini short episode thing, where it took over cell phones. And yeah, that's the logical conclude. That's the logical like next step of it. So I do kind of hope they use the Wire again at some point, and just like I hope they remember they have that Wire, the Wire as just an enemy out there. It's a cool thing. But either way, the episode itself is really mixed, and it's the start of the downward trend of the back half of the season, I will say. It gets 2.5 out of 5 for me. Episode 8, The Impossible Planet. Another two-part episode in this series, which I guess does match the trend set by the 9th Doctor series last time. This episode finds the Doctor and Rose landing on a strange space station on a planet orbiting a black hole, which, as the name implies, is impossible. The crew of the station are a group of human scientists from the future version of the Torchwood Institute who are sent to this planet to study how exactly it exists. We are also introduced to the Ood, which are a species of aliens that are basically bred to serve people. It's a bit questionable, but the Ood are pretty cool either way. So, while everyone tries to figure out how this planet exists, some of the crew start to hear a strange voice that eventually possesses Toby, the archaeologist. This possessed version of Toby lures another crew member, the young Scooty, to her death, while the rest of the crew realize that their drill has reached the planet's core. The Doctor and the head scientist Ida venture down the drill shaft to find a massive temple and a sealed hole in the ground. However, when they get down there, the Ood become possessed by the same entity that possessed Toby, and they begin to come after the crew. The episode ends with a pretty decent cliffhanger of the crew being separated and cornered by Ood, with the pit opening up. So this episode is pretty awesome from start to finish. From the jump, there is immediately a sense of tension and mystery built with the planet somehow just existing. As the episode progresses and they begin to introduce more biblical ideas to build up the threat of the beast, it really does something unique. Now, mixing theological ideas with science fiction isn't new by any means. In doing it in this setting felt different, and just something about it just felt unique. I'll talk more about the acting and characters in the next part when actually dealing with the actual finale, but I will say that they were all great. Rose specifically felt important as she was the one connecting with the crew and also the Ood, so she was basically our like grounding point, our like eyes to the actual like normal people and the Ood as well, which is pretty cool. Similar to Rise of the Cybermen, this first part did a great job setting up, but actually had some good things throughout as well. A solid 4.5 out of 5 for me. Episode 9. Satan Pit. This second part picks up exactly where the last one left off, but now with really bad CG gunfire. Not faulting the CG here, just laughing at it from the time. Either way, the station crew flee into the air ducts to escape the Ood and try to reach their habitation chamber to disrupt their psychic link with the help of Captain Zack, who is in the control room. Meanwhile, the Doctor begins to descend into the pit, given that him and Ida do not have enough oxygen to last for long, so they might as well figure out what's happening. A lot of action happens, but it eventually ends with the security chief Jefferson sacrificing himself to give Rose and the crew time to finish their plan, which they are able to do. Around the same time, the Doctor reaches the bottom of the pit and finds a massive demonic-looking creature chained up. This creature is referred to as the Beast, and the Doctor states that it is the being from before the creation of the universe and is the actual being that spawned all the legends of the devil in every religion that has a devil figure. Because we're getting biblical here. Back in the station, Zack, Rose, and Toby begin escaping the planet, but Toby is still possessed by the Beast and is attempting to leave to spread the influence of the Beast throughout the universe. The Doctor does end up figuring out that the Beast can't leave, or else the planet and itself will be sucked into the black hole. The Doctor breaks the gravity field as Rose shoots out the window of the rocket to eject the possessed Toby into space, thus killing the Beast for good. The Doctor also stumbles upon the TARDIS again and uses it to tow the rocket out of the range of the black hole, saving the remaining crew and Ida as him and Rose leave. While this episode is a great follow-up to The Impossible Planet, it also has some fairly messy writing near the end. The acting throughout both episodes is spot on, and the emotional aspect of the situation is constantly felt. Every crew death is sad, every betrayal by Toby feels impactful, and every tough choice the crew has to make hits hard. And I especially love the acting of Captain Zack as well. I think he was great in the whole episode. And Toby, when he was possessed, felt a little overacted, but whatever. However, having the big conclusion to the conflict basically boiled down to the Doctor just ranting to the Beast about how great the prison is and how Rose shouldn't be considered a victim to fall for his schemes, it felt a bit flat for how much the Beast was set up in the previous episode, and also that episode as well. Also, the Doctor just stumbling upon the TARDIS after it had fallen down in the earthquake in the first episode felt like a cheap way of getting everyone out of the situation they wrote themselves into. It's just like, oh hey look, the TARDIS is there. Yay! Another thing that felt off was how much the Doctor was seeming to care about only Rose in the episode and not the rest of the crew. And I guess on some level it makes sense, since Rose is the companion, but still, there is a whole crew of other people on this station that need to get out of here, that need help. And like, this is mainly seen in the first episode when Scooty dies, and the Doctor's like, oh, well, she's dead. Alright, time to move on to figure out what's going on here. And I might be over-exaggerating a little bit, but that's just how it felt in the episode. And kind of how it feels a little bit throughout the whole season, too. But we'll get to that in a little bit. All that being said, though, I did still enjoy the episode a lot, even if the writing was a bit of a downer and it didn't have the softest of landings, to say. So it's a worthy conclusion, but overall I guess a 3.5 out of 5. Definitely not as good as the first part. Episode 10. Love and Monsters. Alright, so we've reached the slog part of this series. Episode 10 and 11 are a real pain to get through, so I'm going to be brief with both of these, or as brief as I can be. Love and Monsters doesn't follow the Doctor or Rose, but instead follows a man named Elton, who has decided to form a group in order to figure out who the Doctor is. This group consists of other normal people that have had some form of run-in with the Doctor at some point in their lives, and all want answers. However, the group slowly becomes less about the Doctor and more about having a nice group of friends to spend time with, until a man named Victor Kennedy arrives and changes the group into a more hardcore research facility to find the Doctor. This leads to Elton somehow almost banging Jackie while trying to find out more about Rose, and the rest of the group disappearing. Eventually it ends up with just Elton and his first friend in the group, Ursula, finding out that Victor was an alien named an Absorbaloff that has been, as the name suggests, absorbing the rest of the group to feed on them. For a brief chase and Ursula getting absorbed, the Doctor and Rose finally show up and melt the Absorbaloff. The Doctor isn't able to save Elton's friends, but is able to bring back Ursula as just a face melded with a piece of pavement, because why not? And the episode ends with Elton explaining how him and Ursula have a good life together, including a love life that ultimately leaves a very bad taste in the mouth. Pun very much intended. Alright, so this episode is just not for me, even though I do respect the idea of an episode about the everyday people that are affected by the adventures of the Doctor. I'm even alright with having an episode centered around a group that all slowly become friends, all because of their shared experience with the stuff around the Doctor. Hell, I'm also okay with an episode not really featuring the Doctor. Just see next series with Blink. Blink is one of the best examples of this. However, all of both of those aspects, technically all three of those aspects, are wasted in this episode. Elton is a really bad protagonist that I never cared about, especially by the end. His friends in the group all felt like throwaway characters, which they ultimately were. I absolutely hated the Absorbaloff. I'm not a fan of creature designs like that because they look so childish that it takes away from any amount of suspense that I could have for the creature. It's the same reason why I dislike the Slovene as well, though they did grow on me after going back and rewatching them and kind of thinking like, okay, their design is intentionally creepy. The Absorbaloff just isn't. It's not creepy, it's just goofy looking for goofy's sake. Also, the humor surrounding the Absorbaloff was so low grade and it wasn't funny. This episode could have been a nice fun side story showing the human elements of the Doctor's adventures, but instead it ended up being just a boring, unfunny waste of a concept with a barely implemented antagonist. It gets a 0.5 out of 5, which is the absolute lowest score I will ever give anything here, and I'm hoping there are no other episodes that get a 0.5. Episode 11. Fear Her. Following up the last disappointment of an episode with another disappointment of an episode. Yay! However, this one is bad for different reasons, so that's a plus at least? Anyway, this episode finds the Doctor and Rose arriving in London for the 2012 Olympics on a seemingly normal little community. However, children keep going missing, and fingers are being pointed at the house of a child named Chloe Webber, who stays in her room and draws. The Doctor and Rose quickly learn that Chloe is being possessed by an adolescent alien spore creature known as an Isolus, which can create and alter matter, because of course it can. To stop the creature, its pod needs to be found and re-energized so that it can return to its family of over 4 billion. However, the possessed Chloe does not want this to happen, since the Isolus has formed a connection with Chloe through shared trauma, and also traps the Doctor and the TARDIS in one of her drawings, before attempting to draw the entire planet so that they won't feel lonely anymore. Yes, they're trying to actually kidnap the entire planet of Earth. Rose is able to find the pod with a little help from Chloe's mom and a road worker outside, and is able to throw the pod into the Olympic torch as it passes. The Isolus releases all of the drawn people that it had trapped, and the episode ends with the Doctor lighting the Olympic flame and the neighborhood going back to normal. Similar to the last episode, this episode is just pure filler. The premise is decent, and the Isolus is a very interesting creature to introduce. However, most everything else in this episode just falls flat. Abzola Abaji, who plays Chloe Webber, has an extremely tough role to play, and I don't think she's able to necessarily pull it off, which I put more on the back of the director of this episode and the directing choices rather than her acting skills, since she was a child actor during this situation. She even said that it was difficult doing the possession scenes because she had to whisper, and she has kind of a deep voice, and whispering wasn't necessarily the best thing for her to do, yet she still did it anyway. So again, not on her, more the directing. The writing is also pretty weak in comparison to other episodes this season, and the excuse given was that it was aimed towards children. However, I don't think that the episode would have appealed to children either, since it's just not interesting enough. And you can have things aimed toward children and it still be interesting. Look at the entirety of the series of Avatar: The Last Airbender. It's technically an animated show for children. I'm just going to leave that there. And the ending with the Doctor lighting the Olympic flame felt unnecessary and self-aggrandizing. Rose was able to show off a little bit of some good companion skills this time around, and her dynamic between her and the Doctor is also enjoyable to watch in this episode, and she does get some good stuff to do once the Doctor is trapped in the drawing, which is pretty cool. We actually get to see Rose do some stuff, which is good. None of that could save this episode from being flat and uninteresting piece of filler. It's a 1 out of 5, and it's only that because Rose is pretty good sometimes, and the Isolus is kind of neat. Episode 12. Army of Ghost. And so we have finally reached the final 2-part episode of the series, and the penultimate episode as well. We find Rose and the Doctor return to present-day London, where hundreds of thousands of ghosts keep appearing all over the world. While the Doctor and Rose are skeptical of these ghosts being anything but malevolent, the rest of the human population has already found a way to commercialize them. Yay! Go us. This eventually leads the Doctor, Rose, and Jackie to get taken to the Torchwood Institute, which is actually the first time we get to see Torchwood in the series, which is pretty cool. While there, we learn that Torchwood is actually not a good organization, and are also responsible for the ghosts showing up. The Doctor is yet again skeptical, but lets the humans have some fun with their hubris until they learn to stop, which happens fairly quickly. However, Torchwood were also investigating a strange sphere that came through a rift prior to the ghost, which Rose begins to investigate on her own, using some of the skills that she has picked up from traveling with the Doctor. None of this really means much, as a couple of brainwashed employees, one of which played by the wonderful Freema Agyeman, who we'll see more of next series, activate the ghost rift once more and bring forth the actual ghost, which turn out to be the Cybermen from the parallel Earth. Remember them from a few episodes ago? I sure do. After the Cybermen appear, the sphere also begins to open. We learn that it was a void ship and housed the Cult of Skaro, a secret sect of Daleks that hid away during the Time War. Yep, we get them both in this finale. This penultimate is really good for a lot of it. Finally getting to see Torchwood along with the first instance of the Torchwood theme, which I love so much, is great, especially since we learned that they aren't necessarily on the side of good in a sense at this time. This is obviously before some stuff happens and some change in management happens in Torchwood, so they're not necessarily good guys yet. The reintroduction of the Cybermen and the Daleks is a pairing suited for a finale, and both work really well together with how they are set up. Having the Cult of Skaro just have been basically trapped in this void ship the whole time, and then having the Cybermen be like, we're just gonna come over the universe because why not? We can. Because there's already a hole in there. We're just gonna follow through. It makes enough sense for Doctor Who. Rose, and also surprisingly Jackie, are pretty good in this episode as well, with Jackie not being as annoying as normal and kind of acts as a pretty decent substitute companion with David Tennant, which is kind of nice actually. And Rose is doing some solid solo investigating, even though if it doesn't work out the best, she's still doing pretty good at it and is able to show off her skills that she has actually learned from the adventures, which is really cool. The only real downside I can come up with this episode is how the episode opens focusing on Rose with a whole voiceover and her talking about this being her story and this is how she dies. It's an unfortunate issue with these first two series as of the revival as a whole, where it's focusing a little too much on Rose rather than being about the Doctor and the adventures and Rose. It's just kind of all Rose. And it's the weird thing as well, because not every episode's like this, but the episodes that do it are like really hammering it home. But even then, Rose is still good in the episode, and I still liked Rose in the end. It's just focusing on her fell off. And as a penultimate, I think it's really solid and sets up the finale very well. It gets a 4 out of 5 for me, honestly due to finally getting an answer to what Torchwood is at this point, and the return of two of Doctor Who's best and most iconic enemies returning at the same time in the episode. Episode 13, Doomsday. The actual finale is here. We've made it, everyone. Hooray. This episode has a lot of action and a lot of science fiction stuff that I'm just going to breeze past. Basically, the Cybermen and the Daleks start to fight each other because they both have their own way of taking over the universe and they kind of hate each other. The Daleks also have a Time Lord device that they stole during the war called the Genesis Arc that is accidentally activated when Mickey, who is also back from the parallel universe with Strike Force, which frees millions of Daleks from their interdimensional holding area, because that's what the Genesis Arc was. Now the world is kind of screwed, and the Doctor is brought to the parallel Earth to meet with Pete Tyler, and explains that the jumping back and forth between the universes is slowly breaking down the fabric of the parallel Earth. Yay! After getting back to the Prime Earth, the Doctor tells Jackie and Rose to go with Pete and Mickey to the parallel Earth where they can live together while he deals with the Daleks and the Cybermen. They all listen, except for Rose, who comes back to help, and the two open up the rift one last time to suck in all the Daleks and the Cybermen to trap them in the void. Except for Dalek Sec, who escapes, because of course he does, because the series needs Daleks. Rose is saved by Pete and is trapped on the parallel Earth with the rest of them. Sometime later, Rose has a dream and takes the whole family to Bad Wolf Bay, because of course it's called that, and is able to see the Doctor one last time before telling him that she loves him. As the Doctor fades from her Earth, he looks up and sees a red-headed woman in a wedding dress appear in the TARDIS, setting up for the next adventure. For a finale, this works. The Doctor is able to doctor all over the place and figure out a wild and very reckless way to beat the Cybermen and the Daleks, all while somehow finding a way to make sure Rose's newly reformed family is safe. It's pure Doctor being the Doctor, which is good. Torchwood is also seemingly left as a blank slate to be reformed later, which we know it is. And we get a conclusion to the story of Rose and the Doctor, whether you like it or not. I personally thought it was really overly melodramatic. I criticized the romance subplot of the revival back during my reaction to the series, and I still have those same critiques as well. Doctor Who can have some romance elements in it. It is fine. The romance elements worked for the most part in The Girl in the Fireplace and have worked before. They have worked later. Romance is fine to implement into the show. It's just having the stat subplot take over the main story is a bit too much, and it did multiple times during these first two series with Rose's run. The ending and ultimately the entire two-parter being about Rose losing the Doctor is a bit melodramatic for the show. The Doctor also getting emotional over Rose feels like a bit much, given that he's hundreds of years old and an alien, and we also just saw Sarah Jane as well in episode 3. And I know the Doctor has gotten emotional over companions before, it just, again, it felt like too much, and they were emphasizing it a little too much. All that being said, I do think this is a solid finale for Tennant's first series as the Doctor, and the episode gets a 3.75 out of 5 for me due to all the other cool stuff in the episode and the fact that it overall is a good wrap-up to his first series. Episode 14, The Runaway Bride. Haha, you thought I was done, but nope, the Christmas special was counted as part of this series on HBO Max when I was watching the episode, so I'm counting it here. So we're getting the Christmas special, whether you like it or not. This episode finds the Doctor meeting Donna Noble, a sassy redhead that mysteriously appeared in TARDIS on her wedding day, played by the wonderful Catherine Tate. After some hijinks and sassy tomfoolery, the Doctor returns Donna to her wedding reception before discovering that Donna, at some point, had absorbed a massive amount of Huon particles, which is how she appeared in the TARDIS to begin with. The reception is cut short thanks to the return of the robot Santas from the previous Christmas special, because they keep popping up. The Doctor learns that they are being controlled by something and are taken to the workplace of Donna and her husband Lance, where he discovers that it is owned by Torchwood, because of course it is. Under the office building, the crew discovers that Torchwood had been manufacturing Huon particles and that Lance has been drugging Donna with them for months now, in preparation for the arrival of the Rachnos Empress, who is a massive spider alien. Because Christmas, am I right? The Empress wanted to use Donna as a key to awaken the long-dormant Rachnos at the center of the Earth and begin her new empire. The Doctor rescues Donna and Lance gets eaten and offers to find the Empress a suitable planet for her and the Rachnos eggs so they can live in peace. Once the Empress rejects his offer, the Doctor shows absolutely no mercy and floods the chamber, killing all the Rachnos. The Doctor and Donna escape. Before Donna leaves, the Doctor offers her a chance to travel with him. She rejects the offer, for now, but insists that he find a new companion to keep his temperament in check, something that I have also noticed throughout this season as well. So this episode was a delight, and personally a wonderful way to actually fully end Tennant's first series, according to HBO Max. I know the Christmas specials are a bit weird, they usually count as episode 0 of the next series, but I figured this is a good ending point for his first series. The introduction of Donna is wonderful, and I absolutely love the chemistry between her and Tennant, and I wish we had gotten Donna interacting with Christopher Eccleston, or Catherine Tate interacting with Christopher Eccleston. I would have loved to see the interaction between Donna and Nine. It would have been so much sass that no one could handle it. It would have been great. I would have loved that. They play off of each other so well, and Donna feels like an actual true companion to the Doctor, where there's no like romantic subplot between them. They just feel like good traveling partners and good friends, which I know is what the whole theming of them is in her series later on. The Rachnos is also a neat villain of the week, but more so the brutality of the Doctor when dealing with them is what really stands out, and I'm going to mention that a bunch because it's a running theme that came up as I kept watching these episodes. It was something that Tennant's Doctor was incredibly brutal when he was crossed, and it's really intriguing. This was a character beat that I did not remember watching when I was a kid, and honestly swayed my opinion a bit on the character following Eccleston's performance. Either way, the special is fun and works well to end off this series. It's a 4 out of 5 for me. So in conclusion of this series, David Tennant's first outing as the Doctor was an interesting one to rediscover. The first half of the series felt so much stronger than the back half, while the overall development of Tennant as the Doctor was seen as the series progressed. Tennant brings a certain adventurous energy to the role that feels fun, but I personally felt was a little out of place following Eccleston and the events of the Time War that are insinuated and implied via the 2 runs so far. Where Eccleston was still feeling the fresh pain of the war and was masking it with some aloof whimsy, Tennant forgoes the pain in favor of reckless joy that almost feels like a facade to keep back the immense darkness that's behind his eyes. The moments when the Doctor is allowed to let loose, he makes sure he shows no mercy, and even says that in multiple episodes as well. This entire shift in character felt so off as it continued through this series, and I was not expecting it. Now, with that being said, I think I ultimately still enjoyed Tennant's performance as the Doctor, and am interested to see how he solidifies it going forward in his next 2 series. The biggest surprise of the series was how much I ended up liking Rose before the overly dramatic end with her. Rose being a voice of the people and grounding element for the audience in comparison to the Doctor was welcomed quite a bit. I mean, it spawned a meme in the community of Comrade Rose for us. I mean, Comrade Rose is the thing. Every time she interacted with the average person and truly connected with them, reinforced that she was just a normal girl that happened to go on these adventures with the Doctor. The romantic elements of her story were mostly underplayed during most of this series, but when they did come to the forefront, they were a bit distracting and took away from the show. But by the end, I had a real change of heart for how I initially felt about this character, And I think that Billie Piper did a great job portraying Rose, especially when she was allowed to be funny. Funny Rose and funny Billie Piper is really good, actually. And when Rose was actually the forefront, but not the romance aspect of it, she delivered for the most part, and she was really fun. And after averaging the rating of each episode, I ended up giving the whole series a 3.5 out of 5, with some generous rounding as well. The series was a definite mixed bag, with some much stronger first half episodes than the second half, for sure. And the standout episode for me was easily The Girl in the Fireplace. While Love and Monsters was a complete and utter miss for me, I am glad to say that the parts of the series did surprise me, and that most of the series still felt like it held up after this many years, and that a lot of the love I still had for it was still there from when I was a child watching it, and the nostalgia didn't overshadow, didn't cloud a lot of my feelings for it for right now. That might change when I get to Matt Smith and Peter Capaldi seasons, but we'll have to wait and see. Tennant is still a very solid Doctor, but I definitely could feel that he and the writers hadn't nailed down what they wanted to do with the 10th Doctor as of this time. I'm looking forward to see how he plays off his future companions, and to see if those episodes hold up or not as well, and to see his version of the Doctor further solidify. Because I know a lot of people say that he is one of the most consistently written Doctors. I personally wasn't necessarily seeing that here yet, but am interested to see if that is the case in future series with him. And with all that being said, that was my retrospective review thing of Series 2 of Doctor Who, the first series, full series, of David Tennant as the 10th Doctor, starring Rose as the companion. It was fun. It was a fun time going back, rediscovering these episodes, and just having a good time watching them. And I gotta say, basically binging them over the course of 2 days was definitely something, and something I didn't think I could actually do. But, cause like, looking back at Doctor Who, I keep thinking there's like so many episodes, and there's honestly not as many as you probably think there are. So you could probably easily watch them in like a weekend or whatever, which is kind of cool. But either way, I really enjoyed doing this, and I hope you all enjoyed this as well. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about this series and about this video as well. And do you like David Tennant as the Doctor? And did you like this series starting off with David Tennant as the Doctor as well? I know there are some strong opinions both ways for him, and I know that he is a fan favorite, for better or worse as well, but let me know down in the comments what you think about this Doctor as well. And if you like this video, leave a like. It helps out in the end. It helps boost everything up in the algorithm so that way more people can find the channel as well. If you want to see more from the channel as well, go ahead and subscribe. I'll be doing more of these videos for the following Doctors as well, and I'm going to try to keep them on a fairly consistent schedule, but with life as well, that might get in the way. Keep posted to the community feed. I will let you all know when the next one is coming. But I will be watching the rest of the Doctors, and I will be doing videos like this for the rest of them as well, because this was very fun. And if you want to see more from the channel as well, you can go ahead and watch this video right over here. There's a playlist for something else you can watch. It'll be for Doctor Who, probably. It'll be for Ninth Doctor. And if you want to see something else, right over here's a video that YouTube recommends for you as well. Until next time, just stay Doctor Whoing, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays, and I hope you have a good one.